Welcome to Find Your Tribe podcast. We're broadcasting from beautiful Portland, Oregon. My name is Annie Lavender Weller. I'm a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians and co-founder of the Leadership Lab, which is a career, academic, and transitional coaching nonprofit. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, author, and International Coaching Federation ACC certified business coach and consultant. Welcome to my podcast, Find Your Tribe. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Find Your Tribe. Today, I have the amazing and funny Kermet Apio. Did I say it right? Apio.
You said it right the first time, yeah.
See, I get all nervous thinking I'm going to say it wrong, and then I say it right, and then I second guess myself. So, Kermet, you're from Honolulu, Hawaii,
Yes.
and you enjoyed your early childhood in paradise, and you
Yep.
spent your time watching television, playing and procrastinating, and everything else in between. And today you do that three things extensively still. You moved to Seattle from high school, and you went to University of Washington, and that was early 1989.
85. I went to 85, yeah.
I have 89 here. So, that's when you did your first open mic was 89. Or
Yes.
was it 85?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then in May 1990, you quit your job and you said goodbye to the health care and benefits. Took a leap into performing full time. And you say it's your only job skill, but I know that you're a pretty awesome husband and a pretty awesome dad. So, and then you are winner of the 2009 Great American Comedy Festival.
Yes.
And you've done numerous appearances on television, radio. You've been in comedy festivals in Aspen, Las Vegas, Vancouver. You performed in all 47 states, and Seattle, also a past winner of the Seattle Comedy Competition, and also semifinalist in the San Francisco Comedy Competition. And you are also, in 1988, you were Dishwasher of the Month at SeaTac Airport Denny's.
I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of my time at Denny's.
That's awesome. And you're married, of course, and you have beautiful children.
Thank you.
Of them. And so welcome to Find Your Tribe.
It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And so, as I always ask my guests, what does Find Your Tribe mean to you?
Well, that's to me, it's a big part of these sort of huge moments in my life. When I came to college, I had moved from Hawaii to Seattle, dealing with weather that I never lived in or understood, and there was a really big group of Hawaii kids that were going to University of Washington. And I got to say that for that freshman year, to have them around was awesome, right? Just that comfort zone of kids that knew what you were going through. It was just a big deal. So I made all these friends who, a few of them from rival schools that in Hawaii would never have talked to each other. But in college, we were all kind of going through the same thing. And they helped me a lot in that first year. And then when I started doing open mic, I started doing comedy, there were a lot of these really great sort of misfit people, these odd cats that really didn't have a crowd in their workplace or whatever. And we all kind of hung out at open mic, and we were from different places in life. We were, different races, we all did different things as our day jobs, but we just loved being around comedy clubs and trying to tell jokes for 3 minutes. And boy, that group, if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I make it through, because the first year in comedy is so hard. I mean, you're bad more than you're good in your first year. And so to have this group of people that were going through the same thing was amazing. And so to me, that's what it means to me, is that in these really huge transitional points in my life, there are these people that were going through the same thing, that we were able to share that experience and kind of help each other through it.
And I know, one of the things that you said is like, the misfits, the comics. Do you feel that, being a comic, that you're still a misfit? I mean, we're getting in our 40s and 50s now. And we've been around for quite a while. I think I've known you since I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Which is so weird that we've all known each other for so long. So what was it like to be, because I feel like a lot of the people that have become comics, they were those misfits and those people that didn't really fit in high school or middle school. And then you get on stage and you're like, oh, this is my tribe, my people. So What was that like?
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is when I started. This is before cell phones and internet. I started a long time ago. So now it's very easy to get on your phone or get on your computer and and find your tribe, find people with similar interests. Back then
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't, right? You know, and I know
Mm-hmm.
I liked comedy. I was a fan of comedy, and I worked with a guy who at the time was doing open mic and getting some paid gigs here and there, and he took me to open mic. So I sort of found it. I sort of just was hanging out with a friend and sort of found open mic, and yeah, I really do think that comics, what we do is essentially look at the world a little bit differently than everybody else, and so yeah, it was this group of people that were willing to go up in front of total strangers and you know really silence a room possibly for 3 minutes, but on the off chance we could get a couple of laughs during the thing. And it was a really powerful thing to see other people willing to go through that,
Mm-hmm.
because when you watch the open mic, what you realize is, and you say you watch two or three people go up and in a row and hardly get any laughs, and you
Mm-hmm.
think to yourself, well, I could go up and hardly get any laughs, I could do that. um, and then as those people grow, sorry, as those people grow with you, um, you really share something, and you get excited when they get better, and they get excited when you get better. That's a really powerful thing.
So, can you explain to the audience the difference between being an open micer versus a Patton Oswalt or um, somebody that they see on Netflix having a Netflix special? And there's people in between there, of course. I mean, there's there's
Yeah.
different type of comics, and I know this because I was in that comedy world for a little while doing PR and promotions. But can you kind of explain like the differences
Yeah, there's
between the different types of comics?
well, that's the thing, is that the comics that you know about, the comics that are your favorites, your household names, they have been through 10 to 15 different phases of comedy before they got to the point where you've heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's, you start at open mic where you're hoping to get on stage. You show up at sign up time, which is usually an hour before the show, and you hope you get on the list. And there might be more comedians than audience members. There could be 5 to 15 people in the audience, and 22 comics are going to go up that night. And it's just this process of going from open micer to doing guest sets on showcase shows, and then emceeing at clubs or emceeing one nighters. And it's a whole sort of step ladder process you have to go through. And you mentioned Patton. I remember Patton when he was just
I
starting to
do
get
too.
yeah, I remember when he was starting to get MC work, and we all were like, that guy's brilliant. I remember he came up to the Seattle Comedy Competition in, I don't remember the year, but he didn't do well at all. He never placed in the top 5 one night, but the comics were in the back howling. We were just going, this guy's so funny. But the audience was kind of, we don't get this guy,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just brilliant stuff. But he wasn't quite to the point where he knew how to make that brilliance sort of translate broadly. He was very, very focused in who his target audience was.
Mm-hmm.
And we all knew, like, oh, this guy's hilarious. Uh, but he had to go through this process of kind of working through it and getting to the point. I remember when Mitch Hedberg was doing open mic, and
Ah,
and
Mitch.
we
Wow.
all knew how funny he was, but it was just so odd and it was so different. And there were times where the audience would literally stare at him like, "What are you doing? We don't understand this." And
Mm-hmm.
and and you watch him work and work and work and go through the process and learn how to edit. And when he started really committing to editing, then all of a sudden it was like, okay. And from there he took off quickly. And so yeah, there's a process that most people don't get to see unless they go to open mics, unless they go watch open mics. But generally, every comic that you watch that you really like, they've gone through this process. And like I said, probably 10 to 15 different spots that you've hit until you get to that point.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't understand in regards to open mics when they go to them. I mean, this is sometimes it could be somebody's 50th time being on stage or first time being on
Yes.
stage. I know I've seen people that are in the audience that thought that they were funnier than the people that were on stage. And so they decided to get on stage. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. thinking it's just like easy that you can just get up there and just do your thing. And it's like, no, it's not that easy.
Yeah. And you're right. The first time to the 50th time is very different. I mean, that's a huge, huge gap. It's kind of like when you first start trying to lose weight, and for the first couple of weeks, you really are losing a lot of weight, but that's kind of this big chunks of water weight, and your body just kind of going, okay, we're doing this. And then after a while, it gets a little harder to really, because now you're talking about really losing weight in a more focused sense. And it's kind of the same way with comedy, where when you first start, your first 10 times, you improve so much just because there's so many things that you need to improve on, that you're improving on them in buckets, right? In tons. So you're right. You see someone their first time and you go, oh, I can do comedy. But you see them maybe 10 months later, and then you realize, oh, okay, maybe I couldn't do that. And so that gap, that first year, there's so many gaps you have to make. Because like I said, when you first start, you're bad more often than you're good. And maybe in a 5-minute set, you're going to get 1 or 2 laughs. But the potential of what those 2 laughs bring, the chance that, wait a minute, I might be able to do a whole 5-minute set with them laughing at pretty much every punchline, that can be achieved in a year. You just have to keep writing more than that 5-minute set. But those jokes that you start with, the ones that can't work, after a while you drop them. But the ones that you do keep, you're making better. You're editing them. You're adding a tag. You're getting a better punchline. And all that process is something that the people who attend that open mic on any given night, they don't know that process. They just look at you and go, wow, for 3 minutes you ate it. You must not be funny. And that's not the case at all. You're right.
So what made you think that you looked at the world differently, that you could get on that stage and do what do you get? Something like 2 minutes sometimes, 2 to 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Maybe 5 minutes if you're lucky.
Right. Some open mics, if there aren't many people signing up, they'll give you 5. But for the most part, a brand new person gets 3. And as far as me, I was always a fan of comedy. When I was little, if I had a good week, my mom would let me stay up on Friday night to watch Johnny Carson, and so I just loved watching comedy. Even if I didn't get the jokes, I just loved the concept of comedy. I was always a big fan. And then whenever I had in high school and college, whenever I had a chance to write humor for a creative writing class or something, I always tried to do humor, and it wasn't always funny, but I was attempted at it. So I always had this sort of, I was a fan of comedy. And that, to me, my open mic time was great, not because I thought, oh, I'm going to do this for a career, but because I thought, wow, on the weekends, I get to come in for free and watch these headliners I've seen on TV. And so for me, it was like I got to hang around comedy. So I don't even know for the first 2 years if I truly believed I was going to be a full-time comic. I really kind of thought this is the best hobby in the world. I get to come see famous people for free.
And then how did you move then past to, I don't want to really jump forward to what you're doing now, because it's been a journey. You've been doing comedy for a few years.
Yeah, quite a few.
Years. And, I've noticed that my friends that have been in comedy, there's like 3 different types of routes, I guess. There's like that fork in the road. And which fork did you end up taking? And I'm looking at the cruise and the road and then the celebrity. Those are kind of like the 3 forks. I should explain those.
Yeah. Well, so the fork that really sort of defined where I am now is that I in 1998, I think, I got into the Aspen Comedy Festival, and I was really I think I was the last person invited in. I was the one that was lucky to be on. My group, because they group you together and you perform with those same comics every show. Well, my group, Sarah Silverman was on that group, Alan Havey, Jordan Rubin, and I was just kind of going, wow. And this is before Sarah became famous, but she had done little spots on SNL and she was relatively known in the comedy community. And so this group that I was in, and that I remember that festival, there were so many big names to me in that festival. And I was lucky to be there. And what I realized is that I wasn't quite ready for what they were doing. I mean, I didn't have terrible sets. My sets were fine. But when you watch comics who knew what they were doing, they were focused on what they wanted to achieve and who they wanted to be, and they could communicate that in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I'm way behind on this. I got to figure this out. And so I made a decision to go on the road and get better, and then come back into the fold and try and get back into the industry part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, it wasn't a great decision, because what I should have done was still gone to LA, because I go to LA like once or twice a year, but I should have gone there a little more and really just flew down, spent a few days doing the thing. And then, but my thought was, well, I'll just get better on the road, and then I'll be ready to go. And what happens is that's not a defined moment. You never know if you're ready to kind of be seen. And so by not being there, I kind of put myself in this situation of, am I just a road comic? Am I trying to push into the industry?
Mm-hmm.
And what sort of happened is, and it's a good thing, is that a career developed, right? I work clean, so I was able to get corporate stuff, like you said, cruise ship stuff. I still do clubs. I still do, the Indian casino gigs. I get a lot of different types of gigs. And some not even really comedy, like corporate hosting, where I just MC a corporate event,
Mm-hmm.
And so I started getting all these different gigs. And then my wife and I, in 2002, my daughter was born, and then we bought a house, and then I sort of planted into this sort of husband and father life living in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started, losing my hair and gaining weight. And that's an important thing. I mean, I know it's a weird thing to mention, but when you're in your 20s and 30s and you have a different variety of looks you can bring to the table, that's a big deal in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now you're a guy in your 40s and you're bald and your dad, that's the only thing you are. And so in LA, you don't want to be just one thing, but that kind of becomes, you're not going to get the stuff that the Comedy Central is going to look for, people who can get 20 somethings to spend money, right? Well, a 40-year-old guy talking about his kids isn't really going to get 20-year-olds to spend money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of, by going on the road and trying to just work on my stand-up and not pushing the industry part of it, I sort of carved this route for myself. So like you said, that fork in the road came at that point when I decided to improve myself as a comedian, just as a comedian, not as an actor, not as a script writer, but just as a comedian.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people that do go down to LA, they still are doing open mics. You have to kind of start over again.
Yeah.
When you go down. What do you think would have happened if you did go down to LA?
I don't think it would have gone very well, to tell you the truth. Mainly because I think comics, for the most part, have a certain amount of self-loathing. I have a lot of it. I am not. I'm terrible at sort of selling myself. I'm terrible at convincing you that you should have me on your stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that I see do very well in LA have incredible persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Like they get rejected and they say, okay, well, tell me when I can audition again. Tell me when I can try again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not that person. I take it. Now, I've gotten a lot better at not taking things personally, but there is a personal sense of like how I take things, how I react to things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't have the persistence. In a way, if I don't get past an audition, I kind of agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if someone watches my set and says, "Yeah, you're not quite ready," in my head somewhere, I go, "Yeah, you're right. That joke should have been better. I shouldn't have used that joke. I should have used the other joke." And I think comics all have that. I think comics all have a sense of critiquing themselves, but it's not good when someone rejects you and you feel like, "Yeah, I agree. I understand."
We could have like a completely another podcast about the like social demographics or just the demographics of a comic. There's certain chemical makeups of people that are in comedy, and it's a completely different if you're an actor or an actress.
Yeah.
It's completely different, like species of humans, I guess you can say. Being able to work in the industry, especially in public relations and promotions, I was, dealing with you guys on the back end.
Right.
So when you are on stage, there's this personality. Then when you get off stage, there's the father, or there's the alcoholic, or there's a manic depressant, or there's the coke addict, or the sex addict. I'm saying a lot of negative things. There is great people out there that are, really great mothers and fathers and so forth. But I feel like the comedy industry, there has a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Self-esteem.
Yeah. And you're right. This is a whole nother podcast we can go through. But I will say this one thing on this topic. If you look at all the forms of sort of show business, right, and the reason I say that comics are we're different, maybe not broken, but we are a little different, is because comedy is the one form of show business where we need response every 10 seconds. Right? I mean, an actor can wait till the end of a play to really truly hear how you felt. A musician can wait till the end of a song or the end of a concert to hear how you felt about it. Mm-hmm. We need that approval every 10 seconds. Like if you don't laugh at this joke, it's devastating and the room feels awkward, right? Oh man, it got quiet in here. Really? Because 10 seconds ago, I had you guys all laughing. But 10 seconds later, you didn't laugh at that thing. And now I've got to rebuild that within the next 10 to 20 seconds, right? I mean, and that, the need for that, the person who goes into show business willing to risk that of needing approval every 10 seconds, I do think there's a bit of a personality issue in that. Mm-hmm. And there are, and them, there are a lot of great comics who were raised by great parents. They're happy people, they're content. But that's really, to me, the smaller group of us. I think for the most part, there is a bit of issues in that amount of need,
Mm-hmm. I feel that this is my personal opinion, that comedy and comics, it's like the stuff that you want to say out loud that they're saying out loud for you when you dig a comic. Like there's certain people like the Pattons and the Sarahs that are more politically driven, and those are ones that I'm like, yes, speak, live your truth or walk your truth or talk the truth. The things that I, but in a humorous way that it doesn't like blow you over the head with a baseball bat. It's more like a wiffle bat.
Right. I agree.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you say that you're a clean comic, and I know Jim Gaffigan, he's a clean comic. What makes that difference, make you different than, say, the ones that are more dirty? I'm just trying to think of somebody that's really filthy, like the Doug Stanhope, the complete opposite spectrum of you, where every other word is the F word, which we can say fuck, by the way.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned Doug, because when you talk about the way Doug approaches what he does, it is his sense of humor. That's who he is. That's how he thinks. And Doug and I are friends. And when we hang out, first of all, Doug makes me laugh. I love his show. He cracks me up, and he also makes me really think a lot. But when you hang out with Doug, it's who he is. That's his sense of humor. He's not trying to say, well, I'm going to be a dirty comic. He's like, this is the way I talk. This is the way I think. This is the stuff I really find funny. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important part. I think if you're trying to be clean because you think I'll get more work, or if you're trying to be dirty because you think, I like shocking people or whatever, then you're kind of missing it. And it's on either side. If just do whatever you find funny. Like when I first started, I had a couple of bits where I swore. I think I had one bit where I said the F word, I believe. But what I started to realize is the comics I really enjoyed. And I mean, I remember the first time I worked with Brian Regan in Seattle, I was blown away. I was like, this guy is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. And I realized, Regan, Letterman, Gaffigan, there are types of humor that I just really enjoy doing. I have such a fun time. And when I'm hanging out with people, those are the kind of jokes I make. And so at first I did it. At first I started doing clean stuff because I'm lazy, and I know I would take smoke and mirrors to get it done if I gave myself the chance to. And So it was a way to kind of make myself work harder. But then I started to realize, I don't really make dirty jokes when I'm hanging out with my friends. Even comics, you can say anything around comics. There's no lines. When it's just us hanging out with each other, you hear some of the most like people would be really offended by things comics say to each other. But for me, I never really did those things. And so I started to realize, wait, my sense of humor generally is clean for the most part. And
do you think that comes from you just like personally who you are, or do you think it has your influence of being a father and a husband and kind of living that life? Do you think that influenced that, or have you always been?
I've always worked clean, even before I met my wife, and before I had we had our kids. It's just kind of what my sense of humor is. I really like, like I said, I grew up watching Carson. And even Carson every once in a while had innuendo or whatever, but for the most part, it was clean stuff, and so it's the kind of humor I enjoyed the most. And like I said, of all the comics I worked with or watched when I was in my beginning open mic and MC days, it was like Jake Johansson, Brian Regan. It was the clean comics that I just went, wow. I remember when I saw him the first night, and back then clubs used to go Tuesday through Saturday or Tuesday through Sunday. I watched Brian on Tuesday night. And I went, wow. And I watched every minute of every set he did. After I introduced him, I would go sit in the back of the club and I watched every single show. And that's something I rarely, you rarely do that, but I watched 8 shows every minute because I was so blown away at how good he was. And so, yeah, I think it's my sense of humor because it was there long before I became a dad.
That's interesting because I've noticed like some comics have also changed after they have become a parent of some sorts, or maybe they have come out or something along that line. So I kind of noticed that. But I mean, like I say, we've been around for 20-ish years. Yeah. So you've seen a lot of things going on. I think what's really interesting is a lot of comics that are our age are now going down to LA, and they've been doing open mics for the last 15 years or whatever. And they do have quite a following, but now they are heading down to the LAs. And why do you think that is? I mean, I always was like, well, you're comfortable here. You have a house. Like, why would you want to go down to LA? And I've noticed that there's been this trend. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. You're more into the scene than I am now.
Yeah, I think the because of the increase in sort of content providers, now that Netflix is producing their own stuff, Amazon's producing their own stuff, I think there's a sense now that you don't necessarily have to wait for the 4 networks to give you a break. Like there's a chance you could get on something that maybe doesn't pay as much, maybe doesn't have as much exposure, but you can definitely find a crowd. And so it's really different now. Like back in when I first had to make the decision of going down to LA, you were really hoping that the networks, and there were only 4 networks that could get something for you, maybe an HBO if they were able to do something. But now there's so many ways to build a crowd, and you don't need to get all of America to love you, right? I mean, here in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, John Mulaney sold out to Paramount. Well, he's not a household name by any means, but he has a crowd that just loves him. And so I think now it's for a lot of comics, there's a chance to kind of build a certain amount. If you can get a couple thousand Twitter followers, all of a sudden you can start putting people in the seats in clubs in bigger cities. So I think there's more of a chance to hit another level. Whereas, when I was making that decision, it was either be a road comic or go for it in LA and try and be big, be huge. And now it's like, well, you can go to LA and try and be successful enough to get a market, to get enough people so that you could fill clubs, and all of a sudden you're making some pretty decent money.
Yeah, I remember handing out flyers and making posters, and there was no social media to promote the shows, and it was up to wherever the bar or wherever that you were performing. So I don't know if you know this offhand. How many places have you performed? I'm just curious because I know, I follow you, on, of course, our Facebook friends. And it's like, oh, I'm in Podunk, Oklahoma. this month. It's like, awesome. There's a lot of Omaha. I've noticed there's a trend in Omaha for comics for some reason this year.
That's funny. I don't, like you read in my bio off the website. I've performed in 47 states, but I could not tell you how many how many venues. I mean, I have to go through and count, and it is pretty amazing. When you think about that, and I've also done overseas shows too. So it's been incredible to not only for it to go this long, but to span as many states as it has is pretty incredible.
What are those shows like overseas? Because I, of course, being a civilian and not a comic and doing PR and promotions, those people, the marketing people and so forth, are always left out of those.
Yeah.
We get you guys the gigs and make sure that people know. But what is it like to be in Iraq or so forth? And it sounds really scary to me.
I did a tour in Israel that was one of the best things I've ever done in comedy. It was really an amazing experience, and they were so appreciative that we came out there. One of the shows was in a town that's in the green zone, which is not a place you really want to be, but there's a bunch of people living their lives and they love comedy, and they were so appreciative that they were there, and they were in these shows. You get a lot of expats that are glad you're there, but you also get a lot of people who speak English, but they're not Americans, and it's really fun. You do have to make adjustments though. There's some punchlines where you realize, oh wait, that makes no sense to them. That's just not, it doesn't mean anything to them. So you have to kind of go through a lot of editing, and your first show is usually the one where you do a joke and you go, oh yeah, they have no idea what that is. And you get better as you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think that's really funny when I go to, like when I moved to Denver, and they have a great comedy scene in Denver, and you'd be sitting in the audience and it would be a Denver comic, and there would be say something about, I'm trying to think of a road. Is it not Dexter? Dexter's up in Seattle. But they'll say something about a road or something out there, or like a part of town. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Right. And when you look at going to another country, I mean, it's not just the detail thing like that. It's also just the way you think. Like I might say something where, and then I did this, and they would go, well, why would you do that? And you realize, oh, that's what Americans do. No one else reacts that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just the specific stuff, but it's even broader general things where their attitude about it isn't the same as ours.
You know what? Do you feel like that makes you a better comic? And because comedy is all about adaptation. I mean, we've seen, like, I was just watching a Netflix special with somebody, and it was a comic that I had not heard of before, which is weird.
Yeah.
But they got a little, and it was this, that adaptability. Do you feel that going overseas and doing everything you do, I mean, that adaptation?
It does. Because you have to come up with a way to deal with it in order to get your job done. And it really teaches you a lot. And yeah, after a few shows, you start to hit your mark and you go, okay, I think I'm getting this. And it's exciting because, for some of us that haven't done open mic in years, you feel like you're doing open mic again. You feel like, oh, will this work? Well, maybe if I can, instead of drop the joke, what if I did it with this kind of punchline? What if I added this, or is there a reference similar here that would to the reference I have back at home? And so yeah, you feel like you're doing open mic again. It's pretty exciting. You get into the work process, like you said. It's all about being able to adapt. So
you don't do open mics at all anymore?
I don't. I have one kid in middle school and one kid in high school. So if I'm not working, I need to help my wife drive people to sports practices.
I do see a lot of that on your Facebook too.
yeah, a lot of driving around and everything, which I won't whine about because my wife does it when I'm not here by herself. So I will not whine about how much driving I do. But so what I do essentially is try new bits in the middle of a regular show.
Yeah, I was. Another thing is I've seen when Suki's is a bar here that I helped start open mic there.
Yeah.
And so we sometimes have, like, if somebody's in town, like a Patton Oswald or even Jim Gaffigan. I'm trying to think who showed up at ground control. I think, was it Jim Jeffries or something like that, just like showed up at the open mic and did like a 5 minutes, 5 minutes, just because they got here a day early or something along that line, or just wanted to maybe test some new material. So that's why I was asking if you ever did the open mics, because sometimes, I don't know, maybe Portland's a really strange town. We're really open. Come on down to our open mics.
Right. Well, if I'm in a town and I don't have a show, and then there is a show going on someplace, I'll definitely wander down. I love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I'm home, it's really difficult to justify going out to try and do a few minutes. And plus, there's another aspect of it too, is that there are so many comedians nowadays, right? That if I go and take somebody's 5-minute set,
oh yeah,
especially when, this weekend I'm going to be doing 4 45-minute sets, I feel like it's a little unfair. It's a little, you know what I mean? Because I know, because I'm a working comic, that they'll put me on, but that also takes away minutes from somebody else who probably hasn't been on stage in a week and a half, and so their chance to do 5 minutes means more to them than me just going and bumping their set. So yeah. I just, but like I said, if I'm in a town and I have the night off and there's a show going on, I will go there and check it out. And then I will go, and sometimes they'll ask me to do a set or not, and I'll just watch. But if they ask me to, I'll do it. But yeah, so there's a couple aspects to it that I feel kind of guilty about.
So I have a couple more questions, but I know that I got to let you go.
Yeah.
And I always say this, you got to come back and we got to talk some more, because there's even more questions I want to ask you. But what advice would you give to somebody that's listening that is just starting out?
The advice that I would give is which I would actually give myself when I was that age, is that whole, and I know it's a cliche, but journey versus destination is really important. I think because when you get in, there's a tendency to say, oh, here's what I want to achieve. I want to have a Comedy Central special within the first 5 years. I want to have, or you know what I mean? You have all these things, and it's great to have goals. It's awesome. But comedy kind of goes at its own pace. And so the way to make it easier is to really just have fun with the journey, because you're going to make some great friends, man. Comedians are really good friends. They're great people. They're odd and they're weird and they're fun, and so enjoy that part of it. Like really enjoy going down to the open mic. If you don't get on, stick around if you can. If you don't get on, stick around, watch the other comics. Be a part of it, be around it. And then the other thing is just a simple, is to don't ever stop. Like, anytime you think of something, even if you don't think it's funny, even if you think, well, that could be funny, but the way I'm thinking of it, it's not funny, jot that not funny thing down, or put it on a note in your phone, because at some point you'll be going through your notes and you'll go, oh wait, that's a good punchline for that other thing I thought of, or that's a good concept for that other idea I had that I didn't think was too funny. And yeah, even if it's barely funny, jot it down, because it could be something later. And then, and when you get more skills, maybe 5-10 years from now, you might revisit that premise and then know, like, oh, I know how to do that now. I have a way to make that joke funny. And
another really important thing, but I want to hear from the comic. What advice would you give an audience member? And we're laughing because I think we've all been there.
Yep. Yeah, the advice to the audience member is just because they're not famous, just because you haven't heard of them, doesn't mean they're not funny. There's a ton of comics out there who I wish people could see more. So many funny comics, and so that's my one thing. Go see a comic who you don't know, and really trust in that, because there's a lot of great comics out there.
And then my final question is, how can people see you, contact you, book you for a corporate gig? All of the above.
Well, they can look me up, Kermet Apio, Kermet Apio. And pretty much that's my handle for everything. YouTube is Kermet Apio. Twitter is @Kermet Apio. You can find me on Facebook, Kermet Apio. Yeah, and I have a website too. So yeah, you can find me out there. And I appreciate you mentioning that. It's great. I'd love for people to come and check me out on the social media.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I need to get you back on because we have some other things that we can talk about definitely that would probably surprise a lot of the listeners out there about the comedy industry.
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining me for another episode of Find Your Tribe. Please remember to review and subscribe and to visit me at annieweller.com. Have a beautiful day. Find Your Tribe podcast is a conversation with guests addressing all aspects of what makes our businesses and personal lives unique. We will balance traditions with new methods, respecting the past while acknowledging the need to embrace new methods and technologies. Finding Your Tribe podcast uncovers the personalities behind the businesses, the leaders who paved the way, and the essential heart of what makes our tribes run. Please visit me at annieweller.com for more information.